Hello everybody, my name is Cassie Haight, and today my persuasive presentation is going to be the idea of challenging the boundaries of artistic legitimacy today especially our modern society, and why I personally believe that not everything deserves to be called art. Art is very important to me. Art means a lot to me. I display it in my home. I am an artist. My husband is an artist. I love to express myself in different ways in a paintbrush and to be able to create what I feel are meaningful things in my life. I love to be able to go to museums, to be able to see how other artists do the exact same thing, how they create meaning out of a canvas and a paintbrush, or out of a paper and a pen, or even out of a sculpture. I think it's a beautiful thing, and I'm very protective over art itself. I personally believe in modern society we've inflated this idea of what art is, or what deserves to be called art, and I'm here today to challenge that idea. Now, my introduction. If a pile of trash was displayed in an art museum, would it be considered art? And that's my idea today. And I feel like, as crazy as that question might be, a lot of you are probably thinking to yourself, yeah, that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, or no, I don't really feel like that makes a lot of sense. And yet here we are in this society where so many things just like what you can see are in museums, just like these really strange and abstract ideas, which are very subjective and can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, are in museums being compared to what we may consider the greats. And I think art should allow for creativity. I think art deserves to be innovated. I think art shouldn't be just stagnant all the time, but I still believe that there are certain aspects of creative skill that we have to be able to measure to be consider something art or a masterpiece. Now, defining art. Merriam-Webster defines art as the conscious use of skill and creative imagination, especially in the production of aesthetic objects. And that is a very straightforward definition, in my opinion, that art creates an aesthetically pleasing object or painting or piece of work and uses skill and conscious purpose in order to create something. And yet we have a lot of people saying art is subjective, which it is. Art is very subjective. But we've gotten to the point where we're calling just everything art, and I just can't agree with that. I think there's an important distinction and role of skill and intention that should be measured. That there is a skill that a lot of abstract pieces of art that may not initially invoke emotion or things that might happen, but they take so much skill and so much effort and so much intention that it can invoke those feelings eventually. It can show you something. I think that this display that I have right here is Soutine's painting of Carcass, and while it may not necessarily look like what we always consider to be more traditional forms of art, it still took so much time and so much effort and so much purpose in being able to create this work of art. I think that there is a risk of relativism where everything is art, and if everything is art, then nothing really can be art. That we've just sort of labeled everything that anyone ever creates as a masterpiece or as something great, and therefore we kind of ruin these really amazing people's intention and mastery. And I have three different ideas of why I think that is a problem. And I think that's, first of all, like I've said before, the loss of artistic meaning and value, that we can put anything on a piece of canvas and it may not even mean anything to the artist, but because art is so subjective and because we've, again, inflated this idea of what art is, that anything can be art, such as a banana taped to a wall, despite it lacking so much effort. And I think that there's also a factor of economic exploitation, that people are using these different forms of art that take little to no effort to be able to sell or create this, what they may call a masterpiece, to sell to these almost an elitist mentality that, well, you just don't understand what this is. And of course you don't understand the meaning because you're just not that person. which I find incredibly divisive and not right at all. And I also think, like I said before, it just undermines the mastery and skill it takes to really hone a craft, to be able to practice day in and day out, to be able to master something like painting or drawing rather than just taping a banana to a wall. I think that there are historical precedents that we can also follow, just like I was saying. I don't think we should just stop this idea that there is innovation in artwork. I think that that is important. However, I think we should look from the past and look from our history of what art can be in order to determine that. We know that there are so many different forms of art from the Stone Age all the way down to maybe what we consider today to be modern or contemporary art. But in each of those vast phases of artwork, we still have skill. We still have standards that we hold art pieces up to in order to be considered good art. We know that from the Renaissance to Van Gogh and Picasso, that those two artists challenged completely the ideas of what art was, and yet we still consider them masterful works of impressionism and interpretation of the world around them, because they took skill, because they took time and they took effort. I believe that there is a gimmick that sometimes happens in the art world that we as artists and a lot of people interpret, well, if I'm going to become famous or if I'm going to become a good artist, I need to be known. And so of course they create an artwork that has more shock value than it actually does meaning, such as a toilet with a name signed on it, or a bed that was unmade, or a banana taped to a wall. All of these different things create more shock value and controversy, which they know is going to happen just to be known, just to sell this idea that this is art. And I don't think that's right either. My counter argument is that the counter argument might be that yes, art is subjective, and I full-heartedly agree that no one person gets to decide if an art piece is called art. However, I feel that there is a standard to what may be considered a masterful work of art, or that there is a value and an intrinsic value of what something might be as a piece or as a display that we can interpret and find meaning in. That not everything has a meaning, that sometimes art is just that, and it doesn't evoke anything from us other than it's controversial or whatever it might be. But I don't think we should compare those to some of the greats of our society and of history. My conclusion is that while I believe creativity should be encouraged and innovation should be encouraged as well, art has standards. Art has to meet criteria and maintain its value and purpose. And I think that's the biggest thing, that there is a purpose to art, that it's not just some silly lines drawn on a page, that there is intention behind the artist's brushstrokes and the artist's pen marks, not just the interpretation of the viewer. And with that, I thank you for listening to everything that I had to say. I know that art is a tricky subject. I know that it is hard, but I encourage each and every one of you that the next time you see a piece of art, the next time you see anything in a museum or anything that may be displayed in your home, I would challenge you to take a deeper look at both what you feel from it and what you thought the artist felt from it. And with that, I thank you for listening to me.